Hello and welcome to this product video series episode about Tacton CPQ CAD Automation. I'm here with Linus Gillberg, a senior solution consultant here at Tacton, and I'm Rohdin. I work at product marketing at Tacton. And we're going to talk about a very interesting feature that we call CAD Automation in this webinar. I'm going to start off with setting the stage. Then Linus will take on giving us a demo walkthrough, and at the end I will talk about the business value that you create with CAD Automation. So, Tacton CPQ is we have vast functionalities in many different areas. Of course, the configure, price, and quote is at the core of our solution. But today we're going to focus extra on an option that we call CAD Automation, by which you automate the generation of CAD files for your configured product in CPQ. And I also encourage you to take a look at the other product video series that we have prepared going through the other things here in the portfolio. Just setting the stage, we are serving B2B manufacturing companies producing highly customizable big machines with hundreds of options, thousands of parts, and millions of different product variants required to really win the deals in these industry segments. That means typically there's also an installation going on, tailoring the solution for the space and the performance and the output that the customer requires. So really an advanced set of configuration capabilities here, including pricing, of course. But one aspect of this is the CAD files and the CAD automation part, where CAD files and drawings are oftentimes very important in the sales of these assets and equipments. And it has multiple purposes and multiple functions and benefits. First of all, CAD files of the equipment clarifies what is being sold and aligns the buyer and the seller in multiple ways. I mean, sizing, collision control, things like this can be checked with, if you have CAD files early in the buying process that you provide to your customers. So really avoiding misunderstandings that can happen from just looking at the sales BOM or a tech spec. With CAD files, you really avoid those costly misunderstandings and even perhaps claims that may come after the order. So really reducing quote errors and order errors. But another aspect of CAD files in the sales process is also that you can kickstart the order fulfillment process once the quote has been accepted by the customer. So really, by having CAD files available, then you can immediately start the production and the assembly of the product. So, but there are certain challenges with generating CAD files in sales. One is related to the fact that if you have a high degree of product customization or variance, then you will have to customize those CAD files for every product. These are not off-the-shelf standard products, but really they need to be customized in fundamental ways. And if you have long sales cycles or sales journeys with multiple quote revisions through that buying journey, then you will, of course, have a heavy workload in generating those CAD files for every quote revision. So if you need to involve CAD engineers in those activities, that is not a scalable solution, and you need to be more cost-effective with generating those CAD files. And that's where CAD Automation in Tacton CPQ comes into the picture. So what basically it is, before I hand over to Linus, is we, of course, configure a product, we price it, we quote it, and then we place it for order. That's the core Tacton CPQ functionality. But the CAD files can then also be generated in parallel to that process. And that's what Linus now is going to talk about here in giving us a demo. So welcome.
Perfect. Thank you, Per, for the introduction. So as Per mentioned, I'm going to try to show you what CAD automation really is. And if we try to describe CAD automation with a single quote, it would be a one-click CAD file generation for your sales rep. I'm going to try to show you that live rather than going through slides. So I'm going to jump right over to CPQ. And in this case, I've prepared a solution. I've added a single line item, a palette. And to set the scene here, I'm logged in as a sales representative here, working for a fictive company that produce and deliver all product and things related to logistics. And in this case, I have an opportunity to sell and quote a custom palette for a very specific need that the customer has. So if you're not familiar with CPQ, let's just look at the top here to get a little bit of context of where I'm at. I'm working with an account here, LL Logistics. We have an opportunity, like I mentioned, to sell this custom palette. They have a very specific need for a very specific product to ship these items. And I've created a solution for that opportunity, where we're at now, looking at our line items. And if you're observant, you've probably already seen a button in a banner related to CAD automation. So we can see at the top here that there is CPQ has detected there's a product with a related CAD automation, and is presenting us with the option to generate here. So we can do that from the solution, and we would generate CAD automation for all of our files, or all of our line items, in this solution. But I only have a single one, so I'm going to navigate to that so we can see a little more details. And before we actually generate the files, let's go ahead and look at the configuration that we've created here. So a fairly simple product. We have two main constructions of our palette, either individual boards or a solid panel, which covers the whole palette. We have a few different options to select from here. Standard sizes, but we can also select a custom size. And a few different options of four-way entry, for example, if you want to be able to have a forklift from the side of the pallet as well. And this is, of course, probably a lot less complex than the products that Per talked about, but for the sake of the example, I think this is quite effective. And even though there's quite a few options to select from, there's actually more than 1,000 different combinations that we can configure this palette. So most likely, this is a completely unique configuration that's never been quoted before. So let's click the magic button, Generate. And while this is generating, I wanted to take a few moments to talk about what's actually happening here in the background. We have our configured product, which has compiled the result from the configuration, including information about our CAD automation. This information is now being picked up by something we call the CAD controller. More on that in a little while. The CAD controller actually opens up the software, CAD software in question, the actual CAD assembly, updates it according to our configured product, and sends the result back to CPQ, which was just what we saw happened here. And let's just take a moment to think about what's actually going on here. I'm a sales representative. I don't have CAD software on my computer. I don't actually have any CAD skills. I haven't inquired a CAD engineer to get this information, like Per pointed out earlier as well. So without all of those things, I'm still able to produce actual CAD results that we can now share with the customer to get perfect understanding of what they're going to get and how they would fit that into the context that they need them. That's pretty cool, I would say, actually. If we scroll down, we can see that we have a set of files that we generated, pictures, PDFs. We also have a step for the 3D. And from here on out, I can actually download these files individually, send it to the customer or as a zip file, mail it, email it, but that's not maybe the most effective way of sharing files. They might get lost, there might be a long process. So if we navigate back to our solution and go to proposals, we can actually generate a proposal including these files, or at least the pictures of them. So let me go ahead and select this CAD files part of the quote and generate a quote quickly. just so we can see what that could look like potentially. So we have our finished quote here with some information, but we're of course most interested in the parts called CAD files. So here we can see that we're actually attaching that actual result that we produced just a minute ago. So it's a very effective way of sharing this information through the quote itself. And from here on out, typically what happens if you're integrated to a CRM at least, this is where all of this information is published to CRM and the quote process continues from there. But we do have proposal collaboration in CPQ as well, a very nice feature where you can publish your proposal, including then the generated CAD documents, which is why I want to try and highlight here. So you can collaborate with your customer through a custom object with full traceability and full transparency. Perfect. I'm going to navigate back to our presentation now, and we're going to try and talk about how this actually works. We wanted to mention that we support the three major CAD softwares, PTC Creo, Autodesk Inventor, and SolidWorks. And all of those Tacton products combined can produce more than 50 different file formats, including native files. And we didn't send the native files in this case back to CPQ because it's typically not something that the sales rep is interested in, probably can't even open them or edit them, and they could contain intellectual property. But the native files can be really useful downstreams if we want to use that for production, for example, later on, and things like that. So just worth mentioning that we can produce a lot of different file formats, but native is maybe what's most interesting here. So how does it work? We looked at what it does, but how does it work? If we're very focused around the configured product here and the configuration model. And if we look at sort of the configuration workflow, let's call it that, we have a user interface where we're capturing all of our requirements. The configuration model is updated accordingly based off of those inputs. We're making sure that we have a correct configuration at all times. And when we hit the save button for that configuration, we're going to end up with things like bill of material, price included, maybe some dynamic documents, maybe some static documents, and probably a lot of other information that we need further down the line. What CAD automation really is, or how it works, is that we add a connection between our CAD assembly and our configuration model. We call that mappings. And when we add our mappings to our configuration model, we can add these CAD documents as a result out of that. And if we talk about this mappings in a little more detail, we can consider a bicycle as an example. When we're modeling something in CPQ, we're building a product representation of assemblies and sub-assemblies and module positions. So if we consider this bicycle or part of it, we can see the sub-assembly steering structure here, which consists of a fork and also an additional sub-assembly front wheel. You can already start to see some similarity here between our configuration model and an actual CAD part structure. These module positions are so-called realized by modules, which is really the product data in table form. So for example, we have different forks and different wheels, and one of these variants is going to be selected at a certain point in time for these individual positions. And here we can see that most likely our CAD set is going to consist of the same variants actually. So it's going to be very easy for us to make this connection or create these mappings where we essentially map these variants one-to-one with our CAD parts. So this is really going to be an product replacement operation in our CAD system when we switch between fork 1 and fork 2, for example. So very effective and intuitive way of creating that connection between our configuration model and our CAD model. But we don't always have discrete parts for every single variant that we produce. Let's consider another example where we're looking at another part of the bicycle, the frame and saddle pole, more specifically. The saddle pole is essentially just a pipe with a length and a diameter and a connection to the saddle itself, of course. But in this case, we only have a single part that is represented by multiple different options. We can, of course, map dimensions rather than the discrete variant, meaning that we're pushing the length and diameter value onto the CAD model, controlling it parametrically. And here is really where we can utilize the power of Tacton's configurator together with CAD automation. So if you have anything in your product that needs to be cut to a certain length, for example, raw material like a beam or a pipe, imagine trying to model that with discrete variants, all of the different combinations. It's nearly impossible. We can create a customized length for a beam or a pipe, cut it to the exact length during production. And by actually doing this, we're really moving a lot of ETO cases, engineered to order cases, into configure to order, because our configurator is handling that variance, if you will, and we can produce the exact result with CAD automation without having to model these discrete variants. So we're really utilizing the power of parametric CAD, of course, and the power of Tacton's configurator. And again, let's circle back to the configuration workflow, but talk about it from a more CAD automation point of view. We have our user interface capturing the requirements, the configuration model, evaluating those inputs, creating the most optimal solution for your inputs. The mappings here are driving both the 3D, but it can control the 2D as well. So we talked about mappings for the 3D in terms of part replacement and dimensions, but other typical things that we want to control are things like parameter values, metadata, feature states, and suppression states. So we can do a lot of things to manipulate our CAD. And the CAD is, the 3D is of course reflected on the 2D later on. So what happens when we start to, extend our pipes and shorten our beams? They might not fit on the drawing anymore. So we can actually control the 2D as well, making sure that the drawing is looking nice and tidy by controlling things like drawing state, view placement and scale, and annotation position. So we can drive both the 3D and 2D CAD models from our configuration model. And how do we create and maintain these so-called mappings? Well, there is something that we refer to as the mapping editor, and this is actually running inside of your preferred CAD software. So on our right here, we have a big box which actually represents our configuration model. And we can see that we have highlighted the deck board position here, which is actually connected now to the deck board in our CAD part structure to the left. And the typical information that we provide here, or in this case, it's a length and width and component state, but it could as well be a component replacement, which we talked about. Worth mentioning as well is that this is a point-and-click intuitive user face, so there's no code for setting these mappings up. And if we're looking at the top here of the mapping editor part, we can actually see that I'm connected to an administration environment, and we can see that I'm actually syncing my mappings to CPQ in the cloud, real time. So everything is stored and managed with CPQ, even though we're in our CAD software at the point in time. So quickly, let's just look at what kind of information we're storing and what settings we're doing in CPQ related to that. Here we're on an assembly, the pallet assembly that we just saw an example of in the demo. And we can see at the top here, we have some different options related to generated output. We can see that the output that I've selected is for the assembly is a step file and a JPEG. I also have my SolidWorks assembly here, so a native file format, but you can see I'm not uploading that to CPQ because it doesn't make a lot of sense, and potentially there could be intellectual property in there. There's a CAD data panel here with some options related to that. A storage type, which is set to CAD asset catalog. It means that actually my CAD files for this CAD automation is stored in CPQ as well, meaning that when I set up CAD controllers, we're going to talk about those in a little while, they can actually fetch the latest CAD data as well as the latest changes from our configuration model automatically. And of course, we can see that our mappings are now stored on our assembly that we set up in our mapping editor. Quickly, let's talk about the CAD automation execution from a high level. There are two things that are very interesting to us at this point. Again, the configured product, because this is very centered around the configured product. But here I've created a representation of what we call the CAD controller as well. So what's happening now, I'm configuring my product, my palette in this case. When I hit the save button, that result, including our mappings, are compiled and stored on the configured product. When I click the button which says generate files, this is actually being published or made available to our CAD controller, which can fetch this, consider everything that's in our configuration results, open our CAD assembly, update it accordingly, open the drawing, update it accordingly, save it, and send it back to our CAD results panel, which we were seeing on that configured product as well. And that can, of course, be aggregated to solution, which we saw and include in our proposal or proposal collaboration. Worth mentioning here on this picture as well is that this is scalable. We could potentially have multiple CAD controllers to be able to serve a big volume of configuration activity. And one very small but important thing is that our native files that we talked about are actually stored on these controllers. From here, we could use these files downstreams for example, production or a lot of other things. And again, we touched upon this a little bit during the presentation, but we want to mention data accuracy again, meaning that our configuration engine or our configurator is taking into consideration all of those user inputs, making sure that we have a solution that's optimal for the customer in this case. So we have data accuracy in making sure that we have the right solution for the customer. All of this information in the configuration model is trickling down to our CAD generation as well, because we're basing our CAD off of that result. So the CAD is going to be representing, perfectly reflecting our configuration every time, consistent and of the same quality each time. And downstreams as well, from a supply chain point of view, we're making sure that we're actually producing the right things according to our configuration as well, which again is validating all of those rules, containing all that data, considering the customer inputs, making sure that we have perfect accuracy from start to finish, if you will. And last thing that I wanted to mention is that CAD automation is available across all our channels. So we were looking at direct sales now, but it's also available, of course, for partner sales and self-service. Partner sales is also a portal where you log in, similar to CPQ with a named user, while self-service is something that you can embed onto your website, for example. But the interesting and important part here that all of these three channels are governed by CPQ administration. So there's a single source of data, or single source of truth for our logic, our products, and CAD automation included. I think I managed to cover everything, and we'll hand over to you, Per.
Hey, Linus, that's really magical.
It is, right?
And also the way in which you can scale this in different ways, not only technically, but also through these different channels. Amazingly to have this availability also for your end customers on your digital commerce site or in your web shop. So just before we finish off here, just explain or make explicit the business value that we're creating here. We have a major cost reduction process here, of course, because we have less reliance on the manual labors of specialized CAD engineer and sales engineers in producing these CAD files. The sales rep can do this themselves without CAD skills and without CAD software installed. But we also reduce the design and drawing errors. If you're creating these drawings and files manually, there will be, of course, manual errors appearing in those, depending on the skills of the CAD engineer. But with this configure to order process and configure-driven design, we create that data accuracy that Linus referred to, which will reduce errors in the end. Also, reduce misunderstandings in the sales process will boost or speed up the process and avoid sort of costly misunderstandings that can maybe appear later in the sales process. And then, of course, kickstarting your production with these CAD files can happen very fast, since everything is set up once the customer has accepted the quote. But you also increase the revenue, right? So because you have faster turnaround time, you can respond to those customer inquiries much faster, which means that you will beat up your competitors in a faster way as well. And of course, you increase the sales volume or the quoting volume, because the sales rep can now generate those quotes themselves much faster and increase the actual exposure to the market. Also, of course, since this liberates your CAD and product experts in these mundane sales tasks, you will actually also boost innovation, because they can now focus on creating new features and functions of your products rather than assisting sales in their day-to-day job. So there are multiple effects of introducing Tacton CPQ CAD Automation into your organization. Okay, that's a wrap for today. I just want to highlight that all these product features that we talked about are used by trusted leading B2B manufacturers. I invite you to visit our website to read some of those customer stories that we have there. And I also encourage you to, if you're interested in other aspects of Tacton CPQ, I encourage you to watch those other product video series that we will make available here. And if you want to experience a demo of Tacton CPQ CAD Automation yourself, please reach out to us. Go into our website or scan this QR code to book a demo today. So with that, I want to thank Linus and for your attention, the audience, and see you next time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.